Welcome to the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Hi, my name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, I am so honored to welcome Kate King. She's a licensed professional counselor, board-certified art therapist, and creative entrepreneur. And of course, the multi-award-winning author of the upcoming book, Mend or Move On. Mend or Move On, okay? Get it together, because if you're not mending, please move on. Welcome, Kate, to the platform.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Me too, because this is a guide about healing or leaving toxic relationships. Come on. Are we in the season or not? This is the time when even our government is toxic. So how do we get through and heal through toxic relationships, Kate?
You're so right. It's everywhere. It's all around us. And to be honest with you, that's why I wrote this book, because I feel like there are so many people who don't want to accept toxic relationships as the norm. They don't want to participate in them. They don't want to perpetuate them, and they certainly don't want to create them. So, in my opinion, so much of the work that I do as a psychotherapist is about helping the individual heal themselves so that when they plug into the collective, they're plugging in with the highest and healthiest version of themselves. And that goes for relationships too. So, yeah, there's toxicity on the large scale, but if we can each really address the reasons why we're attracted to toxicity or perpetuating it, and if we can heal that and heal the trauma that leads us there, then we won't be seeking those familiar old patterns anymore. We'll be creating new patterns. And when we create new patterns, we attract a different connection based on what we're bringing forward. And then from that, we're starting to model for other people so that they can see what healthy relationships looks like. So in this way, we sort of start small with the individual, and it radiates out like a ripple effect. And I think that's actually how we change our world, just one person doing their work at a time.
Well, why are so many of us attracted to toxic relationships, and how can we create new habits?
I think we're attracted to toxic relationships because they're familiar, honestly. The way
Mm.
that the human nervous system and brain works is that we're so conditioned and adaptive, which means that we kind of meet life as it presents. And when we have experiences, our nervous system adapts to it, creates strategies, whether they're healthy or unhealthy, so that we can secure love and belonging and ultimately safety. Our nervous system's primary job is to keep us safe. And if it finds that keeping us safe means people pleasing or codependency or avoidance or trauma and abuse and perpetuating things through cycles and generations, we're going to do that because it's going to feel healthy, it's going to feel normal, it's going to feel stable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it truly is healthy. It just means that it's familiar. So a big part of healing the trauma of toxic relationships is taking a second guess at what you've always thought was normal and asking yourself if you really want to do that anymore. And especially if you're in a parent position, if you really want to teach your kids something different than what you've experienced and break that cycle so that moving forward, things can be different.
What patterns did you notice that led you to focus specifically on toxic relationships? Because you've been helping people for 2 decades. What did you see that led you to focus on toxic relationships?
Well, I have some experience with this from my personal life. I have estrangement. I have a very toxic family of origin. And so some of the early signs of this, I guess, in my own life, where I had to be a very, very good girl. It was like living within the confines of what was determined as good and compliant and not difficult, not too sensitive. And so living this way and then finally reaching a place in my own personal work where I was able to break out of that and see those patterns as the dysfunction that they were so that I could rework them and replace them with healthy patterns that helped me ultimately to work with clients who are in these same struggles and different versions of this in my practice. Because ultimately, I think a lot of therapists, we teach from the levels that we've healed. When we know something personally, it transmutes differently than trying to help our clients from a theoretical place by itself, because we have the lived experience in our nervous system of knowing what that felt like and knowing what it felt to change it. And so it becomes a lot smoother to transfer that knowledge to our clients and help them move through it too. So a lot of my clients will come to me with dysregulated nervous systems. Some of them are similar to how mine was. There's like that people pleasing, some perfectionism, the state of fawning in the nervous system, which is basically being small and compliant and trying to please people for safety. But other people have the opposite. They have more of the fight or flight response or the freeze response. And those all indicate that the nervous system is asking for help. It doesn't feel safe. And so, depending on kind of how each person presents in my office, I will meet them at that place and help them understand the messages that are coming through their nervous system. And we'll sort of tease apart what is the information that they can move forward with from that.
How do we distinguish whether it's a toxic relationship or we're just misaligned?
Oh yeah, that's actually a topic that I tackle really early in the book because I think it's very important. So basically, I think in this internet era that we live in right now, pop
Mhm.
psychology buzzwords are everywhere, and toxic relationships, they're they're hashtags, you know, and
Yeah,
they're
and we get
filled.
overwhelmed. Yeah, we hear it so
Mhm.
much.
Yeah, we get overwhelmed to the point where I think a lot of people just like shut down and they don't
Mhm.
even consider that maybe there are real narcissists, because now
Mhm.
everyone's calling someone a narcissist, right? Gaslighting was
Mhm.
the word of the year from Webster's dictionary in
Mhm.
2022. It's used so much. So I think there's a lot of confusion about what toxic relationships really are because there's sort of an umbrella statement. So I do like to make this distinction. Thank you for this excellent question. So, toxic relationships imply that there is consistent and persistent patterns of damage that happen in the relationship. It's not a one off. It's not like things are mostly okay and there was this experience that felt toxic. There can be individual toxic experiences in relationships that are otherwise not toxic. What makes them really toxic is the repetition, the persistence of it, so that your nervous system is constantly holding this state of arousal that it's trying to protect you because it feels like it doesn't know when the next blow is going to come because the blows keep coming.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's one indication. And then the next one is really that the relationship is harming you on some really true and deep level. It's not just irritating, it's not just annoying or pissing you off, it's actually causing trauma. And trauma, in my definition, is when something happens to you that derails you from your normal functioning in life. It makes it difficult to show up. It makes it difficult to be in your body, makes it difficult to connect. So I like to use those two as sort of the litmus test for people. Like, is it consistent and persistent? And are there real measures of damage being done here? And if not, it could just be misaligned. And a misaligned relationship might still need to end, it might need to transform, but it doesn't necessarily make it toxic. I always say that misaligned relationships aren't always toxic, but toxic relationships are always misaligned because a toxic
Mm.
relationship is never good for you.
Now, can it be traumatic? Can the relationship be traumatic even when it's perceived as something normal for others?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So relationships are subjective. which means that they come through the lens of the people who are involved in them. We can't have an objective opinion from the outside looking in at the relationship and assume that that's what it feels like to be the person inside of it. So this is because we each come into relationships with all of our individual and unique life experiences, our baggage, our trauma, our filters, the veils that we hide behind, and that's all very unique to each person.
Yeah.
So, objectively speaking, someone might look at a relationship and be like, that looks completely normal, it's fine. But then you interview the people in the relationship and there's immense suffering, and someone feels shut down or guarded or inauthentic. They feel like they're on defense all the time. And you wouldn't necessarily be able to see that from the outside looking in. There's that old saying that you never know what happens behind closed doors in a relationship. And it's
Yeah.
like that, right? We can look and we can have our perception, but unless you're the person in it and you're the nervous system that's being affected by the dynamic, you really can't speak to how traumatic it is, because trauma is a subjective experience.
Let's talk about one of the most controversial topics today, which is estrangement from family, especially parents. Can you talk about why more people are choosing no contact, um, or is it just a trend?
hmm I think that the people who like to say that estrangement is a trend are the parents who have been cut contact with. I mean, so this is my audience. I work a lot with estranged families, and particularly the adult children of estranged families. So I
Mm-hmm.
work with the people who walk away. And sometimes I will walk with or I will work with an estranged parent, but only when they have the insight and the self-awareness and accountability to be able to look at themselves and say, I know that I had a part to play in what happened, and I want to be curious about that. I want to understand this. Please help me see the things that were my blind spots. For that type of parent, I love to work with them. They're insight oriented, they're growth motivated, and ultimately they're approaching the estrangement with curiosity. But for the vast majority of estranged parents, that's not the perspective. It's very much a perspective of, my child did this to me. I am the victim. I've done nothing wrong. I've been a good parent. This culture is influencing my child negatively, or my child's spouse has made them do this. Like, it's just all very based on denial and avoidance and lacking accountability. And
Yeah.
in my experience with estrangement, accountability is the key element if there's going to be repair. And I don't think it's all the fault of any one person. I think relationships happen in dynamics, it's a dance. But if we're going to talk about repair and healing, we do need to have everyone on the table to own their part and to be open hearted and open minded to the other person's perspective. So I think that's part of the controversy, is that the parents who are estranged are really vocal about their opinions about this being a trend. But I don't believe that estrangement is a trend. I mean, it's been happening for decades, even in my own family. It's been happening for many generations. I think the internet and social media is a place where people have a mouthpiece that can be projected and heard everywhere. And so, because of that, maybe we're hearing about it a little bit more. Maybe there's more curiosity, more conversations like ours to talk about it. But I think it's an experience as old as time, really. I mean,
It
think
really
about
is.
back in the medieval ages, people used to kill their parents. There
Yeah.
would be violence within families, or they would kill the eldest child in their place for the throne, things like that. So the things movies are made of. So maybe someday in the future, they'll be making movies about us.
Oh my goodness. I know that many people experience separation and then the guilt or the trauma from the toxic relationship, maybe with a parent or maybe just a family member that you were raised with or around. But then after deciding that there's going to be some separation, there's some guilt around that decision. What steps can one take just to release that guilt and just stand confidently in their decision?
I would encourage people to lean in and get curious about their guilt. Guilt is
Hmm.
one of those emotions, kind of like shame, that people tend to want to push away because it's really uncomfortable. But
Yes.
I don't think we have any bad emotions. I think of our emotions as messengers from deep in our psyche, and they bubble up just to let us know that our system has to process through something or that there's
Yeah.
another layer that we need to heal. And so, if people can be curious about the guilt and ask themselves, is this my guilt even? Or does this feel like a projection from others? Or is this because I'm working against a culture or a family system that is attacking me for my decision? And it's this feeling of like wanting to collapse. Guilt can come up for all reasons, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the decision was wrong. I think that's important for people to know as well. And I would also recommend that if someone is truly estranging from family, it's a good idea to have a therapist, because when you cut off from the people who you were born into system with, potentially if you're cutting off from your parents, the people who created you, it's really deep. It's
Yeah.
energetic, it's emotional, it's physical. There's so much entwined within family systems. It's not simple. And this is why it makes me crazy when people think that people cut off from families on like a whim or an impulse, because
No.
it takes so much strength and courage and suffering for a person to cut themselves off from their family of origin. It's really the last case that people can ever consider when they've tried everything else to heal the relationship, and they come to a place where they feel like their health or safety is really at stake.
I agree with you because I'm looking at it as something that must be so painful. It's like cutting off a limb, you
Mhm.
know? So for you to go to that extent, to just remove that limb, it must be like your perception is this is so painful, it's going to kill me, or I'm going to have to lose this limb.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Another thing I wanted to ask because I'm curious, can the toxic relationship cause such trauma that it caused arrested development? And for the person who's going through this and experiencing this, they have goals that they're trying to reach, or aspirations that they would like to reach, but they just can't get it. They just feel stuck.
Yeah, so often when people finally break free and make the cut,
Yeah.
they feel their life force come back to them. But when they're in the toxic relationship and they're sort of being pummeled by the trauma, so often the trauma is sort of that insidious kind of gaslighting manipulation type where you can't really put your finger
Hmm.
on it, but you can feel it and you're never really at rest. You're never really at peace. You're always on guard.
Wow.
That consumes an immense amount of energy that people don't often give full credit for. And when you're so
Wow.
consumed with staying safe, staying protected, securing your belonging, making your case for why you should be loved, trying so hard to fit in, there isn't any energy left to pursue your dreams. There
Oh,
isn't anything
wow.
left, right? So that's why often there's a cycle once people do walk away from these relationships where there's absolutely a period of grief and guilt and confusion, and it comes and goes in waves. But once you get through those initial waves, people start to step into totally different versions of themselves where they'll
Mm.
suddenly be like, wow, I'm really funny, or like, oh, I love this cute part of my personality that I never was able to show before, or this hobby that I never had time for before because I was so consumed. And so watching the whole process is just so interesting how much people will change as their nervous system regulates and brings them to safety.
Am I safe to say that there's a discovery version or a discovery phase of who you really are after the separation phase?
Absolutely. And I think the discovery phase can be a little scary at first because people who
Mhm.
have been in these really toxic dynamics for maybe their entire life, they haven't been allowed to really be their true selves. They don't know what it means to be authentically them or genuine in their expression of self. And so they're sort of like tiptoeing into brand new territory. They're like, I don't know what foods do I like? All I've ever eaten is
Oh,
what this toxic
wow.
person put on my plate, right? Or what kind of relationships, I thought I was an introvert all this time, but really my nervous system was just protecting me. I'm actually pretty social. And so, yeah, there's a
Mm,
huge discovery, and it can be empowering and it can be exciting. It can also be scary, and it can be interesting for onlookers who have maybe longtime friends who have witnessed this person, or if someone stays with their partner during and after a separation with like a toxic family, the partner will be like, wow, my husband, my wife, my partner, they're so much brighter now. There are elements of them that I love now. They make jokes now.
wow. Because they are revealing or discovering parts of themselves that they didn't even know exist.
Well, and they feel safe to show the
Yeah.
deeper parts because
Yeah.
when they're
They're in a
stuck in their
safe
toxic
space.
family, yeah, like they've been conditioned that they can only reveal the aspects of them that their toxic family approves of. And that's
Mm.
probably a pretty limited bandwidth in terms of their entire personality range. And so once they start to expand beyond that limited bandwidth, I think everybody gets surprised.
Wow. How can we be supportive of people in our lives that we feel are experiencing or have experienced this toxic relationship and they found a way to separate? How can we, or they're in this discovery phase, how can we be supportive?
That's a really good question because, to be honest with you, I feel like there's a lot of people who know someone who's going through a painful cutoff. Maybe it's with toxic family. It could be a very difficult divorce or a professional breakup between business partners. This applies
Hmm.
in all fronts. This happens a lot with friend breakups as well.
Yeah.
And I think the best way to support someone is to have curiosity. Curiosity is my favorite quality of all human qualities because if you can approach someone with curiosity and just withhold your judgment and your assumptions of what it must be
Hmm.
like to be them and their experience, and just ask, what's it like? And what do you need? And how can I support you? Then they can fill in the gaps and they can help you understand how to love them better, how to be there for them. Maybe this person needs someone to cry with, or maybe they need someone to laugh with. And how do you know until you ask? So I would say curiosity and also compassion, because if someone has gone through this period, they've undoubtedly had to be really incredibly strong and resilient. And
Hmm.
it's probably been the fight of their life. And so when someone comes out of a season like that, they probably just need a soft landing place, and offering them compassion can go a long way.
So don't be pushy. Don't be like, okay, so now that you're out of this, let's work on your dreams. Let's work on your goals. Just don't do that.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
ask them, say, now that you're out of this, how can I support you? Like, what do you see for
Okay.
yourself? And what do you see my role for you in your
Oh,
next stage?
okay. I'm taking notes, Kate. Yeah, this has been such an incredible conversation. I appreciate this because I feel like we all have encountered people in our relationships, in our family dynamics, and like you said, coworkers that show signs that they're going through some things, and we all have that person in the family who is just struggling because they've separated from someone, either a parent or a loved one, like an intimate relationship. And so this conversation has taught me, some things, what to do, what to say, and what not to say. So
Hmm.
thank you. And I'm sure when people read this book, because in the book you introduce the 7 traps of toxic relationships. So I'm sure when
Hmm.
people get the book and they read the book, they now can start to see different traps of toxic relationships and identify
Yes.
if they're in this phase or in a relationship that has these toxic traits. Can you please walk us through some of the most common toxic traits that you
Yeah.
see in relationships and how people can avoid getting stuck?
Yeah. Yeah. So for each of these 7 traps that I've identified, these are the 7 traps that are incredibly common through the thousands of people who I've talked to on this topic. And I have found these traps to be consistent across different cultures, different ages, different socioeconomics. Like, these are the traps. And in the book, I talk about how to identify if you're stuck in the trap, what to do if you're stuck in the trap, and then how to prevent yourself from getting stuck in that trap again in the future. So the book gives a really deep rundown of each of these, but I'll just go through them quickly so that we
Yeah.
give the readers or the listeners a little bit of a little meat here around this.
Mm-hmm.
So the first trap is buy-in. So that's basically when a person buys into the culture, the toxic culture, as feeling like it's normal. They don't question it. It's what happens a lot intergenerationally in family systems where, grandma treated mom like this and mom treats me like this. So I'm just going to treat my kid like this because this is who we are.
Cool.
It's sort of this unconscious surrender that makes you feel like you don't have choice. And you always have choice. You have free will. And this is why change making and cycle breaking is also, a popular hashtag these days, because there are people, particularly when people come to the point where they become parents, where they're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to give my kids these same trauma scars that I have. And so they don't buy in anymore. They start to question, do I really want this? Is this really good for me? Is this healthy? Do I have to? And once you start asking questions like that, you get different answers.
Is it a buy-in could be because I've heard in my family and some families it's always been like this.
Right.
Like that's just how it is. Either you love it or you leave it.
Right.
Ooh.
That would be the buy-in. The
All
buy-in
right.
is just sort of taking the pattern as at face value and saying this is who we are and there's nothing we can do about it.
That's number 1, guys. Take notes.
Number 1. Okay, so trap number 2 is comfort.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get comfortable in a toxic relationship once you learn how to play the game and stay safe within that dysfunction. So for me, that looked like playing small and being a good girl. It was never completely comfortable. My nervous system was always on guard. My digestion was always a little off. My anxiety was always a little ramped. But ultimately, I had reached a place of comfort with it where I was like, I knew what to expect. I knew how to play the game. I knew what to say and not say. I knew what to tell my partner to say and not say because I was comfortable for a long time before I wasn't. So another aspect of the comfort piece is this sort of surrender to the dysfunction where maybe you know that it's dysfunctional, but it's too hard to shift it, or you don't believe that you have enough strength inside of yourself to challenge it. And it just feels like the path of least resistance to be a peacekeeper. That's an archetype that many people in the comfort trap kind of fall into, is they're like, I don't want to make waves. I just want to keep the peace. But actually, you're complicit with the toxic dynamic if you're keeping the peace.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Because if you're not speaking out about the truth, then you're part of the problem.
That was deep. Okay. I got to get used to it. Let me get to number 3. What's number 3?
Okay. Number 3 is powerlessness. So this is where people start to feel like victims, or if the abuse has been so severe, they feel absolutely helpless. This happens in dynamics where there's power and control. And if someone in the family or in the partnership or in the marriage or in the friendship has dominance and a position of superiority or power over another, they can make the other person feel utterly powerless. And the trap of powerlessness might be one of the hardest ones to extricate from, because essentially you're trained that you can't speak back to this person. You can't stand up tall. You are insignificant. You are weak. And it's a form almost in some cases like brainwashing, where you start to question your value and your worth to the extent where you stop fighting. And there's nothing an abuser likes more than to render someone else powerless, because then they feel big, they feel strong, they feel supreme. And so in those dynamics where control and power are really evident, I always look for the powerlessness and to see if someone is stuck in that trap.
Wow. Okay. And number 4.
The fourth of the trap is the false ownership. So false ownership is when somebody says basically, it's all my fault. It's always me. I'm the problem. I'm the black sheep. It's always me. And it could be true that it seems that way, because in toxic systems, oftentimes a black sheep is chosen to carry kind of that dark projected energy that the rest of the system doesn't want to hold. So they say, we're all good, but you're bad. And I look at for this as a therapist, because oftentimes the kid will come into therapy as the identified client, but really the parents are the problem. They've just projected all their material onto the
Oh,
child.
wow.
This happens in couples too, where sometimes the couple will come in and there will be one very obvious person who's taking full ownership for the problem. And I mean, it can't always be your fault.
One person's fault, right?
Right. But when you're talking to someone who's stuck in this false ownership trap, they believe it is all their fault, because that actually gives them a distorted sense of control. If it's all my fault, then I guess I have the power to change it if I want to, and I can keep striving and trying and putting effort into fixing it because it's all my fault. And so in some ways that keeps them safe, but ultimately it burns them out like you wouldn't believe.
Wow. Okay. All right. That was number 4. Number 5.
Okay. So the fifth trap is unhealed trauma. So when we're working with our relationships from the perspective of our wounds, we're not coming through clearly from a healthy and a healed higher perspective. And if you have two people who are wounded and potentially attracted to each other because of their wounds, then they're going to only escalate in those wounds. And so it can be a very seductive trap for people who are kind of always working through trauma together or always dealing with their mental health together, because they're so identified with their mental illness or with their trauma that it actually is not in the service of their ego to heal it, because ultimately that's what connects and bonds them. Why would they heal the thing that is bonding them? So if you're connecting to people from an unhealed trauma place, it's never going to be healthy.
Oh, wow. Despite who you are.
No, despite who you are, because when you're in your wound, you're not in your authentic self. You're in whatever part of you fractaled off when that trauma happened, and all the narratives and associations that you built around yourself when that trauma happened.
So, before we move on, if you have built a relationship with someone that is experiencing toxic relationship, or they have gone through some trauma and you are befriending them, is that a trauma bond, and can you grow together through it?
I don't think so. Not if it's a trauma bond. So a trauma bond requires trauma. That is actually the glue that's holding the relationship together. It's what facilitates the bond. And without the trauma, there is no bond. And so this is why, you'll see, actually, I have two friends that I'm thinking of who are both going through really traumatic divorce at the same time. And they bonded around their mutual experience of divorce. They were each in what they thought were toxic relationships. And then once they got to the other side of their divorce and they both started to thrive and be healthy, they stopped being friends. They didn't need the friendship anymore because they weren't bonding through that trauma anymore. And actually, to maintain that bond would have required them to stay in that kind of victimized, unhealed consciousness where neither of them wanted to live. And so that was an example of a trauma bond. They end when people start to get healthy, but trauma bonds can continue for decades if people don't get healthy.
Heal, right? The only way you're going to have this continuous relationship is because you guys are not healed, and so you are still bonded. You're still in the same place.
Exactly. And that's not healthy for either of them.
The healing has to take place so that you can live your best life and become the best version of yourself.
Yep. So that would be an example of that fifth trap of being stuck in the trap
Healing
of unhealed
trauma.
trauma.
All right. So what is number 6?
Number 6 is avoidance. So the trap of avoidance is incredibly common. And I would say potentially in most relationships that end up in no contact or estrangement, there's a good deal of avoidance for a really long time. It's essentially when a person isn't willing to admit to themselves how toxic the dynamic is. They're not willing to be honest with themselves about what the problem is. And that's only sustainable for so long before the person either explodes because they're like, this is not okay, or they get so shut down and so burnt out that they get sick, or they have a really deep dive into mental illness. And it's sort of like rock bottom, where you can no longer avoid the truth. You have to face it. You have to be honest with yourself. And then usually that's the catalyst for really healthy change in many cases, where somebody will come into my office and be like, I'm finally ready to stop avoiding this. I want to do the work. Or they'll say, I need to cut off from this person, but I don't know how. And that's when the work begins.
That's why you said that they need therapy.
Yeah, because ultimately having
Mhm.
a therapist is an objective container where you
Mhm.
can come and not be judged and be supported by a million different tools and resources. So I think that coming to somebody who's outside of the system, who doesn't know the person, who is not involved in any way, but is full of skills to offer,
Yeah.
I think it's essential.
Wow. I'm enjoying this. And I'm enjoying this because I can see people in my life that will benefit from your book. You know?
Good. I'm glad.
Yes. Yes. So now I'm thinking, should I start, this is, not your business, but I'm just telling you, should I start like a book club with this book and ask people that I'm thinking of to read this, and then we'll get together as a group to discuss it, and then I'll emphasize you're going to need therapy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But,
I think that would be great because then I think people heal in community. And if a
ah,
lot of the time, this population who are feeling like they need to cut away from people, there's a deep loneliness there because they haven't been able to really be themselves. They haven't been
mhm.
able to be honest with people because they've been in this protective mode. And so to sit in a circle with other people who say, like, I don't know what your story is, and I don't know what it's like to be you, but I can relate. I see you. I believe you. Because for trauma survivors, to be told, I believe you, is so incredibly healing.
Oh my goodness. I believe you. Oh my goodness. I would love for you to be a part of our authors conference, because there is a session that I do, for a transformational therapy session that I do. And I believe you'll be an integral part of this session. We'll talk about that later. But where do you live? I mean, what state are
I live
you?
in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, yeah. So we have people that come from Colorado, to our office conference. We've had 2 authors already that has come from Denver. So you never know.
I would love to. That
I
sounds like
will
fun.
invite you. Yes. Okay. What's number 7?
Okay, so this is our last of the 7 traps, and it's codependency. So, codependency is essentially a form of connection where the edges between people are blurred, where I don't really know where I end and you begin, and I don't really know where you begin and I end. All I know is that I need you to be okay, because if you're not okay, I'm not okay, and I can't be okay until you're okay. And it's all just this big mixed up bundle of like you and me and us and we, and I don't even know who I am anymore. So, that's
Hmm.
codependency. A healthier way to connect, this is from the work of Dr. Dan Siegel, is interdependence. And interdependence doesn't lose my me quality and your you quality. It allows there to be a place where we overlap and we share life and we share experience, but we retain our autonomy and our individuality. That's lost with codependency. And so often, codependency is a trap that people get stuck in with these toxic relationships, because it feels like this desperate need, like the thirst needs to be quenched for connection. And when someone's in the stance of codependency, they are not in their own self. And you can't heal, you can't move forward if you're not an autonomous self. Even if you have a lot in common with somebody, if you're behaving like a symbiotic organism where you're the same thing, then that's always going to have undercurrents of dysfunction. And many families, many toxic families, have deep, deep, deep codependency that moves through the generations, and it can be very difficult to extricate from.
This program should be longer. I swear, it doesn't make sense that we're almost up, and I have so many more questions. Oh my God, this has been so good.
Maybe we do a
Thank
part 2
you.
next time.
Yeah, we should. So is it okay? I mean, we can't really go on because I have another meeting later. But let's please come back
Yeah,
so that
I'm
we can
happy
do a
to.
part 2. And I'm not, so I want to make sure that I am not exhibiting any signs of codependency or avoidance or any of these, because I feel like I am so connected to this, because I've been in some, toxic things myself, toxic relationships myself. And it just sounds like this is a great pathway for people to identify what was going on, because I didn't even know when I was going through them that I was going through them. Like, I didn't know it was toxic. I just knew that it hurts, like
Yeah.
this is painful, but I didn't know, oh my God, this is toxic and I need to get out. So I believe that this is such a necessary conversation, because people can now identify, after having read this book, what they are seeing that could be painful and hurtful in their own, lives.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's only in hindsight that you can really see that you've been involved in something toxic, but that
Yeah.
also counts. That gives you a lot of wisdom. Don't discredit hindsight. Hindsight is sometimes the amount of space from something that you needed to feel safe enough to really acknowledge what was learned and what you don't want to do again. And so what I say in my book around these 7 traps is, like, if you see yourself in these 7 traps, good. It's not a death sentence. It's
Oh,
information.
good.
Like, don't
Okay,
you
good.
want to know if this is
Yes.
you, right? Don't hide.
Yes.
Like, the 6th trap is avoidance. Don't avoid this. If you see yourself here and you're like, oh gosh, I'm codependent, or like, ooh, I have unhealed trauma, or I feel powerless, that's your starting place. That's a yay. That's a win. That means you just got a nugget of information about yourself that now you can lean into and start to work on. So don't take any of these as a death sentence or a warning sign or like something terrible about you. We're humans. We all have these things. This is not pathologizing. It doesn't mean you're broken or there's something wrong with you. It means you're human. And these are opportunities for growth.
That part. Once someone recognizes that they're in a toxic dynamic, what is the very first step that you recommend they take?
Go to therapy. I mean,
Yes,
read my
I
book. I think realizing the time that, yeah,
go to
if you realize
therapy.
the dynamic is toxic, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do about it, if you're like, this is really bad for me on some level and I don't know what to do, I would say whatever your flavor of help is, go get it. Whether it's reading my book or listening to some podcasts or going to therapy, maybe you have go to betterhelp.com. You can text with a therapist and it's very affordable. It doesn't have to be individual. Like, most people who have health insurance, there's a therapeutic component to their health insurance. So it could also just be community, building community around this, finding an online community that talks about support for this, but definitely get help because this is difficult to do by yourself.
Thank you so much for saying that and for sharing so much today. Before you go, please tell the listeners how they can be a part of your tribe and how they can get your book.
Thank you. So my book is called Mend or Move On. It is available everywhere books are sold. It's available for pre-order until January, and then copies will all ship out in January. My hub for all of my work is theradiantlifeproject.com. and you can buy my books there. I also have another book called The Radiant Life Project, which is essentially my sort of self-help masterclass of everything I know as a therapist, kind of given to you in one manual for your do-it-yourself at home inner work. And then this new book, Mend or Move On, is the relationship component. So these are all at theradiantlifeproject.com. I'm also on social media. My handle is The Radiant Life Project. And feel free to DM me, email me. I love to communicate with people. I always respond. So reach out if you have curiosity about this or questions, and I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much. Before you go, I have 3 questions that I just love to ask each of my guests. And so I'm not going to let you go without asking these questions. What is a bold promise that you can share with the audience?
My promise is that I will be here for you if you need help, because this is a really intense, difficult, controversial topic. And I want to make sure that no one out there feels alone if they're navigating this. So I promise I'm here. Feel free to reach out if you need help with this.
Excellent. What's a bold statement that you can share that may cause a paradigm shift?
This is a hill that I will die on. It is bold because it's controversial in this day and age. I do not think that people walk away from relationships that are healthy and fulfilling. People only end relationships that are deeply dysfunctional and toxic and harmful. And so this is to the people out there who think that estrangement is a trend and that no contact is people who are victimizing themselves. Like, my bold statement is that this is real, this is a problem, and I am empowering people to move on if they need to from unhealthy relationships that can't be mended.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have one more. You're so busy. You just written a book. You're an author. You've been an author because this is your second book. What is your next bold move that you'd like to make in the future?
I don't know what comes next, to be honest with you, because it feels like this book has so much energy behind it and I've been so consumed with this work. But I do know that whatever comes next will be bold because I have a lot of fire inside my heart for this work. And so stay tuned is all I can really say, because I don't plan on moving through the world quietly. I plan on being a force for healing and to really help people plug into society from that more healed, higher perspective.
Thank you so much. Kate, thank you so very much for giving our audience and me language, clarity, and validation around experiences many people just struggle to name. I really appreciate your wisdom. And I see it as a pathway for healing. Simple, just a pathway for healing and safety and release. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for bringing this level of peace to us. It's like giving us an opportunity to find peace. Mm-hmm. Thank you. For those of you who are listening, who may be hurting or unsure of your next step, please remember you deserve safety, you deserve love, and you deserve relationships that reflect your worth. So be gentle with yourself as you navigate this journey. And thank you for listening and thank you for tuning in. And if you have some experiences or a big idea that you would like to write about, join me in my Saturday class. Absolutely enriching, and I can help you get your book idea out of your head and onto paper. Follow me on social media on Instagram, and the link is in my bio. My name is author Denise Nicholson on Instagram, and you can find all my different platforms there. Kate, please once again tell them where they can get the book, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. You can get the book anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or my website, theradiantlifeproject.com. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.